Hi betting experts, now we're going to take a look at 10 punting pointers for the 2025 Cheltenham Festival. A lot of this sort of advice applies across the whole year of the jump season, but we have tailored it specifically to Cheltenham. First of all, follow the up and coming stables and avoid the priced in top name yards. Now this is probably something that isn't quite as true as it used to be. It has to be said that Mullins, Elliott, to some extent Henderson have dominated the Cheltenham Festival in recent times. Certainly in the Grade 1 and Grade 2 races, Mullins in particular has a virtual monopoly. As we saw at the Dublin Racing Festival, he tends to have half the field in most of these graded races, and it's certainly the case. He's got a very strong hand with the Gold Cup and the Champion Hurdle this season, and all the other graded races in truth. But I do think you're better off looking away from the obvious, particularly when it comes to the handicaps. Look for someone like Emmett Mullins, Harry Derham perhaps, James Owen, Ollie Murphy's had a fantastic season. They've all got young, improving horses, and often in the handicaps, certainly the top Irish yards, their runners are very rarely missed. Obviously, they've got lots of punters connected to the stables, and I do think when Willie Mullins has runners in handicaps, often a large chunk of the market is taken up and you're better off looking elsewhere. Number 2, watch the racing throughout the season, watch the replays, make your notes, keep your tracker horses. I think the best advice I've ever had to do with punting is keep your eyes open and your ears shut. You're going to hear a million rumours in the run-up to Cheltenham 2025. Horses that are working well, horses that are missed, the best one in the yard, lots of stories. You're better off watching what you see on the track over the course of time. Rumours are rarely secrets. Number 3, only play when the price is right and or the each-way terms are favourable. Now, these 4 days are unique to Cheltenham. Bookmakers are keen to take your money. I don't think that's the case for the rest of the year, fun enough, but it's very competitive racing. They bet extremely competitively on every race. If you look at the odds checker grids every morning at Cheltenham, obviously with the huge field handicaps there'll be some over round, but the graded racing where it's less competitive, they're fighting each other to be top prices about the front of the market, and it really is a terrific time to be a punter. Often companies like Priced Up Bet will offer boosts on the day, so some of these short price favourites, there's no great rush to back them until the day of the race these days because there'll be enhancement on the day. Often the each way terms, again, extra places on offer in these handicaps, maybe not as much as maybe 5 or 10 years ago, but certainly a lot of firms will be offering 5, 6, 7 places on the big field handicaps, and you can back a package of horses each way, perhaps those ones that are going to get patient rides in strongly run races, be running on for the places. Number 4, latch on to young claiming jockeys. And don't be shy of backing second string horses in inverted commas from the bigger yards. They're all doing their best over these 4 days. That perhaps doesn't always apply, but there's no need to be scared off very often, particularly in the handicaps. There's no doubt that if Paul Townend's on number 1, that could be sort of 5-1 favourite, and horses with equal claims in the form book, because they've got young claimers on or unknown Irish jockeys, can be 4 or 5 times the price. Obviously the days of McCoy and Walsh are long gone, but there's always a big market for the big name jockeys. Try and look for jockeys who are going places. Danny Mullins been a revelation this season, and perhaps for some of the handicaps, look at Jack Tudor. He's riding out of his skin. I think he's the next John Frankham, Jack Tudor, a brilliant young jockey. Keep on track of stable form, number 5, and the lead up to the festival. This is always a very important part of betting, particularly on the jumps, hot and cold yards. I mean, I know since the turn of the year when the flu jabs went in, Alan King's horses haven't been right. He's barely had a runner. He reported that Edwardstone wasn't himself the other day. He did have a winner at Sandown in February and then said he's taking the rest of the week off. So a big note of caution there in the run up to the festival. Venetia Williams, she's been flying. Whether that will stay the same as the ground dries up in the spring is another matter. Henry de Bromhead, he's turned things around. He had a very quiet January, but he's much more back in the groove now. It's something well worth looking at. You can find the information on the Racing Post or at the race or Timeform to see how they're going in the last 14 days. The strike rate's the key thing, and how many runners they're having. If you can find a hot small yard, well worth keeping their runners on side of, particularly in the handicaps. Number 6, an obvious point, check the weather and ground conditions every morning. I do find that Twitter, or X as it's now called, is one of the great assets to a punter's armoury. You get live live, often reports from the clerk of the course at Cheltenham telling you what the weather's been like, if he's been watering, hopefully not, that won't be needed this year, and any non-runners that can come through and change the shape of the race for each way purposes. So stay on top of Twitter to keep all the news flowing in. Number 7, I do think this is an overlooked point. Track form, very important. How will your selection handle Cheltenham? National hunt tracks in Britain and Ireland, all completely unique, with characteristics that suit certain horses' run styles and not others, particularly when the ground gets testing. I do think form from stiff tracks like Hexham, for example, has no bearing at all on what happens at somewhere like Newmarket or Ludlow. It's totally different. The races are run in sort of 40 seconds different times over similar trips. That's how different the demands are. And even top tracks like Cheltenham and Newbury, for instance, place totally different demands on runners, with the undulations, strong pace and stiff fences at Cheltenham often producing real course specialists. One word of advice I'd say, go back and watch the last couple of festivals. That is easily available online. You'll see a million things that get missed, horses that are a bit unlucky, squeezed out, or horses who are really well suited by fast run races at Cheltenham. It's a good source of finding winners. Alongside that, try and watch the 24-25 Cheltenham trials, all the meetings we've had on the lead up to the big day in March. Number 8, race tactics are crucial. How will the race be run? Working out how a race will be run is a key weapon that the astute punter does need to develop, particularly in some of these graded races. It's not always obvious what's going to lead. Will there be a fast pace? Are there likely to be front runners going to duel and take each other on and set things up for a hold-up ride out the heat of the race? Another thing with Cheltenham over the years, not so much in recent times since we got the new clerk of the course, but there did used to be a part of the track where the ground was a lot better, particularly when either it had rained or it overwatered. It used to be much better wide on the hurdle course, and sometimes at the festival, if the ground gets chewed up early on the first couple of days perhaps, certainly on the old course this used to apply more than on the new course, but it can get very tiring up the inside. And again, I like to look for horses whose jockeys know where the bias was. Paddy Brennan, obviously now retired, used to be very good at that. Paul Carberry, another one in the past, but very good at finding the best part of the track to race on. It is something to look out for in the early races each day. Number 9, look for angles and edges that the market may miss. Use the betting exchanges to lock in profits. There's lots of value available in the morning. I mean, the markets obviously are well developed for the Cheltenham Festival. It is slightly different to the rest of the year, but there's still horses that are big prices that get ignored with outstanding form claims. And as I mentioned earlier, often these come from yards that are less fashionable than the obvious. And number 10, probably the most important thing with betting, keep a cool head and never chase your losses at Cheltenham. You don't have to play in every race. Just look for value, pick your punches. Don't play bigger than you would do through the rest of the year just because it's top class racing. Best of luck with your betting at the Cheltenham Festival, betting experts, and please do check out all our preview videos and anti-post betting advice.